Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of The Selfish Woman. I am here with Antia Boyd, and I'm super excited about this conversation. Antia was born in communist Eastern Germany before the wall came down and was single her entire life before she finally hired her own love coach, discovered the Magnetize Your Man Method, and attracted her husband, Brody. She's now been helping thousands of high value women all over the world for over a decade to have loving long-term relationships. She studied personality psychology at UC Berkeley, is NLP and dream coaching certified, and has spoken on hundreds of stages and radio shows all over the world, including Google, Harvard University Faculty Club, and Good Morning San Diego. She's also been featured on ABC Radio, American Trends TV, and The Great Love Debate. Wow. Welcome, Antia.
Hello. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm super excited. I always love the topic of love and relationships, just me personally and just in general. And I know our readers, hopefully you're not reading this or I'm doing something wrong. Our listeners are going to love this. How's it going? How are you?
Oh, I'm so good over here. How are you, Val?
I'm great. Yeah, cruising through my Thursday. It's the end of January. I feel like I'm glad January is almost done. I don't know. It felt like a bit of a write-off for me.
It's interesting, right? Because you kind of come out of the holidays, but then you expect it to be at full momentum at the same time. So it looks like it can be a little bit of an interesting transition month,
And then we've got the new whatever variant, the variant of the week now that we're struggling with. Like it's like, no, let's just say February. Let's make February the start of the year. That's my deal.
I love that. Yeah, totally.
So you grew up in Germany. When did you leave?
Oh, I left when I was 21. So I just went through high school and made a little bit of money to make sure, I can survive.
Right.
Going by myself. But yeah, I knew when I was 10 years old that I'm going to leave.
Right.
I just never felt it was really, like environment trumps willpower. And so I just felt like this environment is not really nurturing like who I really am. And,
environment trumps willpower. That's such a great phrase. I believe that's true as well. And I think that's an interesting thing to think about, right? It's like, is the environment supporting my best self?
Absolutely. Well, because, you process about 134 bits of information on a conscious level, and the rest of the 2 billions of bits of information on an unconscious level. And the 2 billions of bits of information is your environment. So you better make sure that your environment is conducive to your agenda and your goals, right?
Yes. Love that. So when you left Germany, where did you land?
Yeah, so I actually went to UC Berkeley to study personality psychology because, I grew up in an emotionally absent household. So that meant, and I love the selfish woman because I grew up to a narcissistic mother.
Okay.
And so what happened is that I developed, of course, like a resistance to being selfish, right? Because what do we do when we grow up to a narcissistic parent is saying, well, I'm never going to be like that, right? Like I'm going to be way more considerate. I'm never going to invade somebody's boundaries the same way and disrespect them. And so, but that was my breakthrough, was actually learning. Well, let me actually backtrack. So first of all, it was like all about not feeling good enough, obviously, like attracting men into my life who, of course, because I was resisting my own inner narcissist, I call it. Guess who I attracted? Plenty of men who needed help from me and who needed attention and who needed investment. But guess what? Who I never got that back from, because that would make me what? Feel selfish. So I didn't want that, but of course it didn't work for me. And that's why I left Germany.
Yeah.
And studied personality psychology and particularly attachment style theory, which for those of you who don't know what that is, it actually describes the bonding theory between the primary caregiver, which usually is your mom, and the baby before the about 24 months.
Okay, so you said something that I'm pretty sure our listeners are going to be like, what the fuck? Inner narcissist, like, it's such and I just did an episode about this. If I put myself first, does it mean I'm a narcissist?
Yes.
It's such a buzzword these days, and we're throwing it around at everybody who's just actually maybe a jerk. But, when you talk about that, what does that mean for you? What is the concept?
Oh, yes, I love it. So what happens is we're meaning making machines, right? And when a woman comes from a narcissistic background or from an emotionally unavailable background, right? So they're always saying, well, I don't want to, make a scene and all the things. And the problem is that they're actually distorting their reality, meaning when they say, oh, Antje, that was like a total narcissistic statement I just made, I would say, really? I thought that was just confident. I thought that was just like you taking care of yourself. So because when you resist something, right, like you see it everywhere, right? You're like, I mean, the minute you just say, oh no, I'd rather have this for dinner than this for dinner. I'm a narcissist, right? Or like, I'd rather not go to the movie. Oh, I'm a narcissist. So you start to kind of almost like quote unquote over label yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote a whole Facebook post on embracing inner narcissist. Oh my God, I got so many comments and people unfriended me. And I'm like, you don't even know what that means. And I'm like, oh, I know exactly what that means. But when you actually do for yourself, you can't be a narcissist if you tried. You can't. So if you lean fully into it, you'll be balancing about in the middle, right?
Ah.
Does that make sense? So go ahead.
So what I'm hearing in that, I just want to kind of make sure I'm getting what you're saying. So because we potentially are so worried about becoming or being a narcissist, which, as I said in my episode, so many women have asked me that, like, wait, if I put myself first, does that make me a narcissist? But the very fact that you're worrying about it means you don't have to worry about it, because a narcissist would never consider themselves that. So instead of, you got on the one end of the spectrum worrying about it, on the other end of the spectrum being really confident. So you're saying it kind of it balances out our fear of being, seen as that or being narcissistic, because we have a lot to compensate for. We've got people pleasing and lack of boundaries and conditioning that tells us we can't be loud, can't be big, can't put ourselves first. And so it sounds to me like it's a way to counteract that and bring ourselves back into more of a healthy balance where we do feel good about putting ourselves first. Am I getting that right?
100%. So a good example for that is, let's say you go on a date and you tell yourself, well, I want to make sure that I definitely don't come off as selfish, right? So if you see it as like a pendulum, right? So on the one side of the pendulum is like being selfish and narcissistic, and then the other side is like sort of the people pleaser.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens is you go on a date and you overcompensate, right? You ask more questions for the other person. You're more considerate. No, we can order what you want, and all the things. And what happens is you swing all the way to the other side where you have no more room. You have to go to the people pleaser, what you just said, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to go to the doormat, because the minute you just leave it and you actually just feel like, oh, the man is actually paying attention to me. Now you're swinging towards what you resist, which is that selfish part. And you can, like, if you resist it, right, then you have no other choice than swinging it back to the people pleaser, right? To the always accommodating, right? Always understanding, always compassionate, by the way, just for the other person, not for yourself.
Yeah, right. And I mean, I call myself a recovering people pleaser. And so I'm well aware of what you're saying. And I think part of the messaging is, like you said, like I need to show up as like nice and sweet and accommodating, because then maybe he'll like me. So I'm going to like capitulate to what he wants. I'm not going to have too strong of an opinion or whatever. But then in reality, it's like I'm giving away my power to somebody else, instead of actually just standing in, this is who I am. And then whether they like that or not doesn't matter. That's irrelevant. It's more about, how can I just be my full self?
And let me tell you, the quality of men that you attract into your life is directly proportional to the quality of relationship you have with yourself. So what women get wrong is that they're saying, oh, it's the quality of relationship I have with people. Like, so the more I give, the more I interact with people that want to give to me. And I'm like, that's actually not true. Right. So that's why you may see people who are like, you think like they're bitches or they're aloof and they have the most incredible men after them, doting on them. Yeah. You know why? Because they take care of themselves. They actually say, darling, tonight is not a good night. I got to get my manicure done. Right. And then the guy's like, oh, I better respect your boundaries. Right.
Oh my gosh. Like I have so much to say about this, but yeah, like, and I had this in my notes to ask you about moving from other focused to self focused. And I feel like that's what you're really bringing up is like, when we're focused on the other, what the man wants, what the man needs, how the man's feeling. And I think so many women are obsessive about what they think, how they feel, what's going on, you know, and it just becomes like this all-consuming obsession with, does he like me? And what do I need to do, or how do I need to be in order to be liked? As opposed to shifting to self-focus. This is exciting to me because I feel like that's something I've obviously been learning and growing into, and realizing that the more I put myself and my own needs first, the more attractive it is to other people.
Absolutely. You know, because the men will actually respect you, because what I hear from women all the time is that they're being liked, but they don't receive the respect. And how that shows up is, for example, men who say they say they're going to do one thing and do a totally different one, or men who ghost. That's a disrespectful behavior. Like if you respect yourself, you will attract men into your life who say, at least, you know, let me reach out to Valerie because she really deserves it. Let me really tell her, like, you know what, right now it's like not a great time for whatever reason, but I really want to honor your time and I don't want to just ghost you, right? And then the other piece, what you were just saying, I actually had a breakthrough with that before I met my husband. It was exactly that, right? I would always worry on a date, is he enjoying himself? Was my joke funny enough? You know, do I bring enough variety to the table on the date, right? So that he's enough state changes.
Right.
And the shift was actually, wait a minute, am I enjoying myself?
Yeah.
I actually want to go on a second date with this guy. and actually realized, Valerie, on that particular date, I didn't. This guy was so boring. He was a history professor, nothing against history, but he was as boring as, you know, you would have visualized a history professor. And I'm like, no, I don't want, like, do I feel seen and heard and felt by this guy? No, like he's so in his head, not in his body at all. I don't feel any chemistry. And something like shifted, right? It's like, do I enjoy myself? You know,
am I having fun? We forget to ask ourselves that question.
Yeah.
And right, like so many of us are like, you know, accepting the crumbs, right? It's like, oh, somebody likes me, they want to take me out or whatever. And so we're just like so grateful or happy to have that attention or whatever, where we don't even think to ask ourselves, do I want to date this person? Am I actually enjoying myself? And when I started asking myself that question in my dating experiment of 2021, when I started dating, I was like, that's what I did. I was like, am I enjoying myself? And most of the time the answer was no.
Oh,
But sometimes it was yes, right? And it was really interesting to become self-focused and selfish in dating, and how it's so counterintuitive for so many women. I know it was for me. But when I look at my past results in relationships, it was all about me shape-shifting and becoming who I thought the other person needed me to be. And there, I did experience that disrespect of what you said about actions lining up with words. That's my new love language, is like, do your actions line up with your words? Oh, yay.
because that's what I encountered. You know, it's like men who always said, you always wanted, never expected miracle. But that's great. Just call me next week. You know, just like send me regular text messages. Like I don't need the whole promise of the paradise. Because when I met my husband, he didn't make me those promises. He did say I'm the girl of his story, but he said it very matter of fact. And he just followed up consistently. It wasn't this big deal, and there was no love bombing. So it's one thing to look out for, right? If you experience like somebody who's like, you find a bouquet of roses in front of your door, and then he asks you like, what's your favorite chocolate? And you know intuitively, this is not sustainable. Like there's no way a person does this for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
Then you know, like, okay, I'm not dealing with a secure attachment style here. This is probably either a narcissist or it's an avoidant attachment style, which means this behavior will actually not consistently translate throughout, our dating journey.
Yeah. We talk about that a lot here. The initial spark or the excitement or the love bombing or all of that, and how attractive it is. And yet, is that really what I need? Is that really sustainable? Why is that happening? And I think we need to start asking ourselves those deeper questions and not just getting swept up in the excitement of that initial attention.
And then let's talk about trust as well, because so what I was just thinking is, okay, so if you're so other focused, then why don't you imagine, okay, if the guy that you are dating right now would just dote on you, would just be, no, honey, it's just all what you want. It's what you want, where you want to go, all the things. Like, for one, how long would you trust him? How long would you say, when is he saying what he really wants? Like, when is he actually standing up for himself? Or like, I don't really trust him. He's like, I don't know what he wants, but this is going to come out sideways, some way, shape, or form, in a passive aggressive way, right? Or and we're losing respect, right? Because we're like saying, oh, well, I can just walk all over this person. There's no tension. But it's like this beautiful term, tensegrity, which is really the integrity of a certain tension in between two people, right? Actually, it's used in exercise, tensegrity, but I use it also like in dating too. And when there's no tension, we just know there's something off, because there should be tension. We come from two different backgrounds. We come from two different, whatever, all kinds of things, like belief stories. It shouldn't be like, oh yeah, no, totally, oh, whatever you want, sure, no problem. That, like, oh, this person is selling out on their integrity. Like, how unattractive is that? So think about that next time when you're resisting putting yourself first and having the fear to come off a certain way.
I love that. That's such a great way to look at it, because yeah, you're right. It's normal to have differences in needs, wants, even down to like, what kind of restaurant do you want to go to tonight? If it's always like, whatever you want, it's great at first, but after a while it's like, but don't you want anything? Like,
exactly. Well, and then I also never get to know you. That means there's no connection, right? Like, I'm like, I don't know what you like. Christmas comes around, I don't know, he's like happy with everything. So I don't know what his favorite color is. Whatever dress I wear, he matches a shirt with it. You know what I mean?
What is that about? Why is that happening?
Well, this is actually, so my husband and I, we have a concept called the King and Queen Matrix. And so for the women, there's of course the bitch on the one side, the doormat on the other side. We talked a little bit about that. And for the men, it's going to be the jerk and the good guy. Is that what we call it? Like, I forgot what we call it. But what happens is usually that, you can't attract somebody who's like a people pleaser on the man's side. So maybe they have experienced abuse in their childhood. Maybe they have abused. I better put my parents first. I better focus on other people because my dad didn't give me the attention, right? So then they actually become sort of the female version of the doormat. And then of course, as you swing more towards the bitch, because you become like really like, oh my God, you know what I mean? Like, like you get annoyed, right? And you get like, it's not real. I don't respect you. And you start walking all over them. So that's like the main reason why for men, like, and there's just as much people pleasing going on with men than for women, for sure.
Yeah. So it can be a trauma response.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
It's called sort of like, it's the merger, right? Like the merging with the other person and can't find themselves.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about the bitch. You talk about the bitch code. What is this? What is this?
Yeah. So the bitch code is actually a synonym. So it stands for boundaries, intuition, trust, confidence, and harmony, or you can use homeostasis equally.
Oh,
right. So because I love to use words, just like the narcissist, the bitch, all the labels that people run away from, right? It's like, oh, you didn't just say that.
I mean, that's what I'm doing with selfish too. We're, the words that have all of these negative connotations, we can make something mean whatever we want.
Yeah, exactly. And to actually say, well, what if you actually had a positive association to being a bitch? Could you actually step into that when it's necessary? When you don't get something done on time, let's say, I don't know, even like you said at the hairdresser, it's been 20 minutes since your appointment was at 11, it's 11:20 now. Is it time to be a little bit of a bit? I'm like, excuse me, it's like it's 20 minutes in.
Yeah.
Money,
I think a lot of women are scared of it because they think that means they're going to be rude, cruel, unkind, inappropriate. We all know social media shows us lots of women showing up as the Karen or the woman who's really unkind. And I think that's what a lot of women associate with being a bitch. And as you said, like, complaining about something at a restaurant or whatever, it's like, okay, but I don't want to be that person.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's all about how you deliver it, right? Like you can come from like sort of almost like cutting kind of energy, or you can still be very graceful about it and still say, I noticed my appointment was at 11. It's 11:20. It's 11:20 on your clock too, so
Right.
I do have an appointment at this and this time. Oh yeah, for sure. I'm sorry, madam. Right. So it's all about delivery. So that's actually what a woman needs to learn, is actually moving from confrontation to queenfrontation, because a lot of women are afraid to move through those stages, right? They say, no, I don't want to do any confrontation. I don't want to rock the boat, because maybe they're going to yell at me the way my mom yelled at me when I maybe questioned something in the very beginning.
So the bitch code is all about stepping into our power as women and expressing and communicating that while still being kind and compassionate, but also assertive. That's what I'm hearing.
Absolutely, right? Because the I intuition, it's like, if I just feel intuitively, no, it's not the right fit, right? So if I feel like, and you have this podcast, but if you feel like, what, this guest is not the right fit, right? So part of the bitch code is to say, what, just intuitively, I feel like there's like lack of alignment here. And I see that sometimes with podcasters on the bottom, they say we reserve the right to not publish the episode.
Right.
So that's a bitch move.
Yeah.
And I think it's
Absolutely.
awesome because you make sure you maintain the integrity of your podcast, because your audience trusts you. So we're already at T,
Right. Yeah. And okay. So I loved what you said about, what was it? Confrontation to queen something?
To queenfrontation.
Queen.
Yeah, you go for confrontation, carefrontation, and then you go to queenfrontation.
Because so many of us are scared of confrontation, which keeps us quiet and small and less than, and not rocking the boat, like you said, and status quo. And I mean, I lived most of my life that way. And so coming out of that takes a lot of, for me at least, it took a lot of work on myself, a lot of healing and a lot of shifting, those limiting beliefs and things like that, getting my confidence back. So how do women, if women are listening to this and they're like, all right, that sounds great, Antia, going to become the queen, but right now I'm terrified of confrontation and I'm really unsure of speaking up or using my voice or even having a fucking opinion. What do I do? Because I'd love to be there, but that sounds like an impossible dream for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and part of it is actually, we got to go in the right order, because, for example, if you're not even in your body, so if I tell you, are you feeling your feet right now firmly rooted on the ground? You're like, well, now I do, but I didn't before. You weren't in your body, right? You were probably either with me or with Valerie, or so this other focusedness makes you leave your body all the time. So step number one, when you set any boundary, is you have to come into your body. Because how can you even know where your boundaries are? Like, right. That's why women usually notice afterwards, right? You can always call this a delayed emotional response. Oh, actually, when Joni said this, that was actually inconsiderate. But in the moment, the woman is not able to do that, right? Because why? Well, because she was actually in Joni's world. She had actually left her body to be sort of in Joni's energy field, if you will, in her emotional field, right? So first is always like, okay, come on back. Okay. And then so noticing, and then also the second step is to actually say that you have just as much a right to be here than the other person. Right? Like you have just as much the right to take up space than the other person. So you see, I have like some frames, first of all, right, that I need to become clear on before I set boundaries, right? Because otherwise I'm going to set boundaries. I'm going to feel guilty. And you all know this really bitter aftertaste of guilt. Oh, nobody wants to feel it, right? Everybody wants to want it.
We all know that.
And why is that? Well, because it really feels like shame. It's really, it's not a small sister of shame, right? This sense of inadequacy, like I want to just disappear in the bottom of the earth. I said something wrong, and now, or this person can't handle it, right? Like, but I can handle it. So that's number two. And then number three, what I always love to tell my women is like, just practice in front of the mirror, just different no's, right? Just no, or just no, right? Just different sounds of no. And that is oftentimes already so confrontational for them. That's already so, oh my God.
As you're saying that, I'm like, yeah, oh my gosh, that's such a great thing to do, because as soon as you imagine yourself saying no,
yeah,
I know for most, I'll say almost all of my clients I work with, these women are like, they can't even say no. They've got to say the roundabout explanation, justification. Is it okay if, I'm sorry that, and to just ground yourself in a no and feel resolute about that is honestly one of the biggest steps. I love that technique of like practicing it in the mirror, because I'm going to guess that most women would feel highly uncomfortable doing that. And that's exactly why we need to do it. We got to start getting comfortable with a no, and like no is a complete sentence.
absolutely. Right. And, or if you don't know, so let's say you're on a date, and obviously before we get to clarity, we're going to go through a calibration phase, which can feel like chaos. And what that means is you're on a date and you just feel like, oh, this guy just said something that was just, there's something just, I don't know exactly what it is, right? And what women normally do is they get the impact in their body, and then they say, what, is it just me? Is it because it's Friday? Maybe I'm going to say something next time. Let me just kind of meditate on it and talk with my friend Valerie about it, and all the things, right? And then by the time they say something, it's so delayed, the guy forgot all about it. But what if you just said, wow, I just felt like an impact. And I don't know exactly what it is, but something was just, that had me just kind of lean back a little bit when you just mentioned that you don't like animals. I don't know, I'm just going to make something up, right? But something that's like, that's specific, where the man's like, oh, okay, I did say that. And, let me kind of sit with that. I'm going to tell you as things come up, like what that could be. But what would life be like if you could just speak to it in a moment, even if you don't have an answer, if you don't have a logical explanation yet? But the truth for you, your integrity right now is something is just, I noticed there was a little bit of a hesitation.
Yes.
Out of myself.
When you, like you say, when you start practicing that, it starts to get easier. I've got a little story about that I'd love to share with my own experience, because when I started dating, I'd never dated before. I'd only done like long-term relationships. And I was like, no, I want to learn how to date. And so I started going on dates, and I dated this guy, and it was our second date. And my goal was to like learn how to say no to men, learn how to stand in my power. And we went on this date, lovely date. At the end, we had a kiss, and it was a lovely kiss in my opinion. But what he said after is he's like, oh, you're being a good girl. And for me, that didn't sit well with me, because it felt like you're judging how I'm showing up in this kiss. What are you wanting me to be, a bad girl? What does that even mean? And instead of what I used to do, which would be like not say anything and then stew on it, I just said, that doesn't work for me. And here's why. Here's how it makes me feel. Here's how I feel about it. And he was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. Like, I'm so sorry. I totally get it. I will never do that again. Like, he received it really well. But it was my first experience of like exactly what you're saying of like, no, I'm not cool with that. And here's why.
Yeah. And it was coming really from a place of integrity and alignment for you. Well, actually, believe it or not, the statement he made actually came from a misalignment. It was coming probably from a place of fear of intimacy, like misalignment on his, probably like a coping part, like kind of like,
Right.
oh, I feel like a little closer to this woman. Like, I'm just gonna make a joke of it because maybe
Right.
that's what I observed with my parents. And then your frame, quote unquote, won, right? So he apologized because yours came from alignment and integrity and his didn't.
Uh,
And that's 9 out of 10 times the case in dates, right? Like that the men almost like test us because they come from their coping,
mm-hmm.
Avoidance, kind of like energy. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, can you actually hold your own, I call it queen integrity, in those moments?
Right. Yeah. No, I love that. That's so interesting. So what was your journey to finding love? I know you've been married for what, 7 years now?
7.5 years, yeah, going on 8.
Yeah. So, you talk a lot about attracting your partner. So what was that like for you?
So I was single actually my entire life. Um, and I think part of it was because, well, when you have a narcissistic mom, then on the one hand, you want to please the person, but then on the other hand, you're almost like afraid of them because you want to block yourselves from the invasion as well. So guess what? Plus minus cancels each other out, right? And so like I would meet men, but it would just never lead to anything. And like I said, that's why I went to UC Berkeley, but also started actually a lot of like workshops, seminars, things like that, right? And understanding men, masculine, feminine dynamics, how to forgive men. I mean, all the different things
Hmm.
that I'm sure you've heard of or your guests on, Valerie. And it was interesting. Actually, it started with me helping other women, ironically, because they always knew we would be in line at church and, oh, you went to this workshop last week. How was that? And so enough women asked me. So I just said, let's do a little get together in the afternoon, like a support group meeting, I guess, And so those women actually ended up meeting their man and I ended up being the maid of honor. So I really realized, wow, there's really something to this work. Like this is actually working. It's not working for me, but, and I think a big piece for me was actually, for one, of course, hiring a mentor, because a fish doesn't know that it's wet. That's what my husband always says, right?
Mhm.
So we can really understand things on a logical level. I could explain anything to you, whatever you want to know about dating, Valerie. Like I was like this open book. But when
Right.
it came to integrating it on a date, I was still leaving my body, right? I was
Mm.
still merging. I was still giving him the benefit of the doubt. I was still not saying no without the fear of feeling guilty. Many different things like that, right? But I remember like this particular January 2013, I was 5 months before I met my husband. And I really decided to let my hope die. And I think this is like all of those moments that are just like life-changing.
Mhm.
And so again, January, talked to a guy, of course, he made me all the promises, he texted and he didn't text and all the things. But then I realized, there's been this waiting theme, like waiting for this man to finally show up, like finally be who I desire him to be. And I realized for some reason it just shifted because I had started doing the work also with a mentor, right? So it made me think more, the workshops, all the things that I've taken, that's the same pattern I had with my dad, right? That he would say, we're going to move here. And I was waiting for that to happen, or we're going to do this. We're going to go into this vacation. I was waiting for that to happen. And for me to make that decision that like, it's not going to happen, right? It's never going to happen. And like letting that hope die, it was, I turned on Taylor Swift, the song "We Will Never Get Back Together," and I was just like, "We will never, never, never," and sang that song, and literally broke up with my old self. And
Wow.
so it was really, it was almost like a test in that sense, but it was more like an initiation, right? And of course, lo and behold, of course, the guy that wasn't pursuing me before, then he pursued me, but it was already too late because I had now tasted this new world of what's possible, of like, finally, I don't have to pretend anymore. I'm okay with something that I'm not okay with. You know what I mean? Like I don't have to justify anything anymore. And that's like the big piece that I want to say to the women. It's like, don't just do that because you're like, oh, I'm going to do that with Samuel. If you just said he's going to call me back. No, the reason why it worked. And by the way, this guy ended up calling me and I'm like, oh, if you must, you know, if I don't have anything better to do, but I didn't make any time for him. I didn't go out of my way because I really said, my man knows. He knows.
Yeah.
Right. There's no like turning him around. He needs to sleep on it. He needs to go back to his ex first. He needs to heal his heart first. He needs to, whatever, you know, go through whatever his work journey, you know, first, all the different experiences that I had with men needing to do this last thing. This is the tricky thing, Valerie, right? Like when we attract those unavailable men, there's just this one more thing. It's like this,
yeah,
in front of our nose. It's like you're almost there, right? It's like just this one more thing. Just give it 6 more months, and
there's
then
always one more thing.
He'll be yours forever. You know, and it's like, no.
10 years later, you're still waiting.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Do you resonate with that?
Oh my God, so much, right? I love that. And I love that you didn't change anything externally. You changed your relationship with yourself. And you just decided like, this is it. And that turning point, and everyone I talk to honestly has that turning point of like, this is something that changed everything. And so I love what you're talking about like coming back to self, and I resonate with that so much for my own journey too. But, you know, I love what you're talking about, because we all need to hear that. We need to be reminded that like, yes, like be in our queen energy, learn how to set boundaries. Let's be the bitch code women. And I love your acronym for it, because it's like all of those, and I'm going to put that in the show notes, the acronym, because I really want women to take away what you said about that, because it's so crucial to everything we want, but especially with relationships, how we show up and our relationship with ourselves changes everything. And so that's just like, it's just such a powerful message. Not enough people are talking about that. And it's really, really exciting to me, because I resonate with all of that for myself too.
Oh, that's so great. Yeah. And like, to finish the story. So then 5 months later, I met my husband, Brody. And it was funny because I had just been the maid of honor at my friend's wedding in May of 2013. And, you know, and I was just fed up. I'm like, you know what? God wants me to be single. Fine. I'm going to be single for the first time deliberately. Right.
Right.
And then, of course, I left for Hawaii. And 10 days later, now I was single for 10 years. And then here, like 10 days after making that decision, you know, that's what I want to leave the women, right? Like, so for one, so met my husband. He told me literally the first night we met, I'm the girl of the story. We have a huge responsibility to humanity. Like, he knew who he was as a man.
Right.
But I really believe it happened because 5 months earlier, I said, he knows himself. He has integrity, right? His words match his actions. And he had just decided a month before he met me, because I also want you to think about, what is my man going through that he gets to this place, that he's done with like playing around and just dating women, that he wants to have a power partner that he can be authentic and real with, you know, and can build a life with. And here we are, you know, like
you are
8.5 years later, you know, have a great company and all the things, babies on the way and all the things, you know.
Yeah. When's your baby due?
In 2 months.
Oh, that's so exciting.
Oh,
awesome. Okay, so I just have a couple of final questions for you.
yes.
If you could go back in time and say one thing to your little girl self, what would you tell her?
Wow. When I was 1.5 and I was trying to crawl into my mom's bed, and she rolled over and said, "Stör mich nicht," which means don't bother me, you know, and I decided, don't be a burden, right? Like, I would have been like, if I had like the fairy godmother descend down and be like, no, Antje, like, keep asserting yourself, right? Like, keep acknowledging that need that you wanted to crawl into your mom's bed. Like, don't make yourself wrong for it. Like, don't back off, like keep leaning in. I would say something like around like keep leaning in, like, keep showing up.
Wait, but you remember that you were 1.5?
Yeah, like that particular, you know how you sometimes just have like, I barely have
Snapshots.
memories at all, but I have this one thing that's this like stör mich nicht. It was so specific. It was such a, you know, we have this like even like how it felt, how it sounded, like what was happening, right? Like, yeah. So just like little moments
Love
like
that. Keep leaning in. All right. If you're a reader, what book are you reading right now?
oh gosh, I mean, besides the Bible, we do like we do the Bible in the year again, but also I love the 5 Personality Patterns by Stephen Kessler. And so yeah, that's like a really great book that's really helps you to understand more the 5 different stages.
Awesome. And last question, how are you being selfish these days?
How am I not being selfish?
Give us one example.
Yeah, so it's so unconscious, and but you know, it's really about like saying what I want versus what I don't want, like not feeling guilty for it. So let's say I got asked all the time to speak here or speak there, right? And to just really say, you know what, like this sounds good, I'd love to do that. This doesn't sound so good. You know, I'm happy to send you some other people. So yeah, so constantly being like, I have time for this, I don't have time for this. Right?
Love
This is an
that.
alignment for me, this is not an alignment for me.
Yes. Being
Because, you know,
intuitive
sometimes you
about,
get pursued, you know, and you're like, you know, just, Antia, are you sure that you just have to do this third thing? It's like, yep, I'm really sure this is not the right fit right now, you know?
yeah, being intuitive about your yes and your no. Love that. Well, I'm glad you said yes to me. This has been so much fun. So tell people how we can find you. How do we get into your world?
Yeah, so for the women who just really resonate with all of this and what was that again, and you know, so I would first of all recommend you taking my free quiz, Magnetize Your Man quiz. It's at mymquiz.com, and then you may even be able to get a call with me personally, or with my team. And if you want to just check out my YouTube channel or my not my Instagram, my podcast, or all the things, you can just hop on over to magnetizeyourman.com, and literally all the links will be right there.
Easy, easy peasy.
Easy peasy.
I'm going to go take that quiz.
Yeah, let's go.
And I will put all those links in the show notes as well. So this has been a really fun conversation, and I just love your take on relationships, and especially as women, our relationship with ourselves. I've gotten a lot out of this, and I'm just so grateful for you to be spending time with us today. Thanks, Antia.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Valerie. This was a blast.
Okay, thanks. And we will talk to you guys soon. Take care. Bye.